The storm hammered East Point's marina like a grudge come to life. Rain lashed sideways, thunder drummed like war cries, and waves slapped the pier with fury. Officer Kara Lin gripped the wheel of her cruiser, jaw tight, eyes scanning the flooded windshield. Beside her, Koda, her K9 partner, a 4-year-old German shepherd with storm-gray fur and a stare that never blinked, stood poised in the back seat. His ears flicked with each crack of lightning. "Stay with me, buddy," she whispered, more to calm herself than him. Dispatch had sent her to Pier 9 after an anonymous tip about stolen explosives being loaded in the storm. Backup was delayed. As usual, she and Koda were first in. Lightning illuminated the dock. 3 men were hustling crates into a dark van. Kara shut off the engine, cracked the door open. Cold rain slapped her face. Koda whined low in his throat. Before Kara could call it in, one man spun, raising an assault rifle. Muzzle flashes bloomed like cursed fireflies. Bullets slammed into the cruiser's hood. Kara ducked, yanked her sidearm free. But Koda was already in motion. He sprang from the back seat, body hugging the ground, flanking wide to draw their fire. Kara rose, fired 2 shots. One hit a shoulder. The van door flung open. Then a small metal object clattered toward her. "Grenade!" She screamed, dove behind a piling. The blast rattled her teeth. Koda yelped, thrown sideways. Kara rolled, ignoring the pain spiking in her ribs, and fired again. The van screeched off into the shadows. 2 bodies down, 1 escaped. Rain roared against the silence that followed. Kara crawled to Koda. He was on his feet, blood dotting his flank, glass in his fur, but his eyes locked on hers, unblinking. "We're alive," she whispered, pressing her forehead to his. She didn't know the footage would be tampered with, or that a fingerprint on a bullet casing, planted after the chaos, would change her life forever. The morning after the shootout, East Point woke under a bruised sky. Gray clouds hung low like judgment, waiting to fall. Outside the county courthouse, news vans circled like vultures over a fresh kill. By 6 a.m., satellite dishes were up, and reporters whispered into cameras about dirty cops and missing evidence. No one knew what really happened, only that Officer Kara Lin had walked into a storm and walked out in cuffs. Inside the courthouse basement, Kara sat shackled, her uniform replaced with an orange jumpsuit. Her badge and pistol now sat behind glass, labeled evidence. She focused on her breathing, trying to push past the ringing in her ears, the smell of wet asphalt still ghosting her memory. Above, the jury was being chosen. The prosecution wanted skeptics, people who distrusted power dressed in blue. They got them. A retired librarian, a substitute gym teacher, a coffee barista with a neighborhood watch sticker still on her car. Her defense attorney, Eli Cho, looked barely old enough to vote. He argued she was framed, that evidence was planted, and her record spotless. But in court, pictures speak louder than medals. The prosecution flashed freeze frames of the dock, gunfire, shadows, and finally, a blurry silhouette they claimed was Kara firing first. Then came the twist no one expected. When the surveillance video played and the blurry figure moved on screen, Koda, waiting outside with Officer Franks, lunged so hard he nearly shattered the leash. His bark rang through the courtroom like a war cry, primal and defiant. The judge pounded the gavel. "Remove that dog!" It took 3 deputies to drag Koda away. Behind them, Kara sat frozen, her fists clenched until her knuckles bled. Koda had recognized something, but no one cared. The defense had no more money for counter-experts, no surprise witnesses, no Hail Mary. The jury deliberated through lunch, and when they returned, no one met her eyes. Guilty on all counts. They set the execution date within weeks. Outside, tabloids screamed headlines. Inside a locked kennel, Koda sat unmoving, water bowl untouched. Something had shattered, and it wasn't just a verdict. 3 days after the verdict, the city moved on. Donations to the K-9 unit vanished overnight. Budget cuts loomed. Talk radio tore Officer Kara Lin apart. But Koda didn't move. He lay silent in his kennel at East Point Municipal, ignoring the food tray and fresh water. The handlers said he was mourning. One called it depression. Another marked it as failure to thrive. By day 4, the unit vet logged a note. Consider early retirement. That's when Jonah Mercer showed up. A former Marine, 39, still carrying the limp from a spinal injury. Titanium pins in his back. He walked like someone who used pain as rhythm. He brought papers, adoption waivers, signed and notarized. The kennel stank of bleach and despair. Mercer crouched outside Koda's cage and said nothing for a full minute. Then softly, "She's not gone. Not yet. But she needs us sharp." Koda's ears twitched. When Mercer opened the cage door, the Malinois didn't bolt. He simply walked forward, leaned his weight into Jonah's chest, and let out a sigh. Half surrender, half promise. They drove home through pink morning light, the dog's head resting on Mercer's lap. Back at the cottage overlooking the coast, Koda chose the front door. He slept with his nose pressed against the crack beneath it, as if waiting for someone who might come walking up the road. Dr. Wren came by with biscuits and a portable scanner. She found minor fractures along the ribs. "Grenade shockwave," she muttered. "Limit his activity for a month." Mercer glanced at the dog still pacing like a soldier awaiting deployment. "He'll give me 3 days. Tops." He was right. On day 2, Koda padded out to the garage. Mercer had kept an old weapons crate from an op years ago. The dog sniffed it, tail giving one thump. "You still remember," Mercer whispered. He started building scent wheels in the backyard. Something burned behind the dog's amber eyes. Not grief, not confusion, purpose. While Koda trained in the yard, moving with slow, deliberate steps around Mercer's makeshift scent wheels, far away in a concrete box, Kara Lin counted cracks in the ceiling. Crescent Heights Correctional wasn't a prison. It was a machine. Fluorescent lights buzzed whether the sun was up or down. Every clang of the door was a verdict, and Kara, once a decorated officer, was now just a file number in orange scrubs. Her cellmate, Tasha Velez, was in for torching a biker gang's stash house. She smoked cloves wrapped in Bible pages and watched Kara with lizard eyes. "You're the cop, right?" she asked the first night. "Half the block wants to shank you. Other half wants to hire you once you flatline." "Thanks for the warning," Kara said, folding her blanket military tight. Tasha chuckled. "Stick close. I'll show you where the fault lines are." Time blurred. Cell searches, strip-downs, denied mail, and a cold silence that wrapped around her like chains. 1 week in, her only photo of Koda vanished after a random inspection. The absence gutted her, but she showed no anger. Rage was bait. Instead, every evening she knelt by a hairline crack near her bunk and whispered his name like prayer. "Stay strong, Koda." Across the city, Jonah kept pushing. One night, a teenager named Leo arrived on the porch. Prosthetic leg wrapped in a cherry blossom decal, laptop slung over his shoulder. His mom cleaned Mercer's house twice a month. The boy had begged to help with the dog. The first visit, Koda growled and didn't move. Leo sat against the wall and softly recited Neruda in Spanish, verses about sailors and distant shores. No eye contact, just words. On the fourth visit, Koda walked toward him and let the boy place a leash around his neck. The next day, they walked the ridge together, overlooking the ocean. But at night, Koda still paced, restless, as if something in the dark was watching them, waiting to move. Jonah noticed it first, the unease in Koda's steps at night, the way he paused at windows, the deep, guttural growl at nothing visible. He dismissed it at first, until the feathers. A single black feather left on the porch railing. The next night, another one tucked beneath the windshield wiper. Not wind, not birds. He installed motion sensors and cameras. 2 nights later, at exactly 2:17 a.m., the footage caught it. A hooded figure testing the backyard fence. The shape retreated the moment Koda's silhouette appeared in the floodlight, snarling. Jonah forwarded the image to his old contact, Naya Tran, a journalist with too many enemies and too much truth on her hard drive. She replied with one word: nix. Meanwhile, inside the prison, Kara had built a rhythm. Push-ups before dawn, mental notes on guard routines, and every legal loophole she could memorize. Tasha returned from the prison library one evening with blood on her lip. "They think you're a snitch," she said. "Mexicas. They're planning to move on you. Showers, probably." Later that night, a kite note slid under the door. "Navarro dies in the laundry chute. Stay clear." Kara felt her heart spike, but she didn't run. She analyzed. She recalled Tasha once bragging about a loose vent screw, one that led into a maintenance crawl space. If they needed leverage, they'd make it. At 2 a.m., they executed a risky maneuver. Tasha slipped through the ducts and hid a contraband phone under the gang lieutenant's bunk. Kara, meanwhile, flooded their cell to trigger emergency maintenance. By morning, the guards had discovered the phone. The lieutenant was shipped off to segregation. The threat? Delayed, not erased. That same day, Jonah, Leo, and Naya met in secret at a closed veterinary clinic. Koda lay beside them, ears up, alert as blueprints of Doc 9 spread across the table. They had a mission now. Find the truth. Free Kara. And stay one step ahead of the ghosts, watching them from the dark. Leo dug through layers of corrupted city archive files, fingers flying across his keyboard. Koda lay at his feet, tail flicking. They were hunting a ghost, something everyone else had overlooked. And then, at 3:12 a.m., Leo found it. A single corrupted traffic cam still frame, taken from a pier across from Dock 9. In it, barely visible in the fog, stood a figure on a rooftop, holding something long and cigar-shaped. A rocket launcher, time-stamped 11 minutes before Kara even arrived on scene. Nia published the still image with a blistering column titled, "Evidence Tampered. Who Framed Officer Kara Lin?" For 6 hours, number Free Kara trended on every platform. Then it vanished, smothered by a celebrity's messy divorce. But in prison, Kara heard whispers, rumors leaking in through contraband radios. Her name, flickering like signal through static. It was dangerous, this new thing. Hope. One storm-drenched night, Jonah jolted awake. Koda was growling, body tense, nose aimed at the kitchen, motion sensor, tripped. Jonah crept down the hallway, pistol drawn. A shadow moved behind the fridge. Before he could act, Koda charged. The intruder turned, blade flashing. The fight was brutal. Koda clamped down on the attacker's forearm, even as blood sprayed from his own shoulder. Jonah fired once. The figure stumbled back, crashed through the kitchen window, and vanished into the storm. Left behind, a slick of blood, and a tiny obsidian raven carved from volcanic glass. The symbol of Nyx. Dr. Wren stitched Koda's wounds again. Jonah's hands trembled with guilt, but the attack confirmed it. They were close to something real, something someone wanted buried. The next morning, Kara was summoned to the warden's office. No visitors, no appeals. Just a cold sheet of paper with one line. Execution date accelerated. 60 days. No explanation. No defense. That night, Kara sat in her cell staring at the wall. Then she made a decision. She traded her mother's empanada recipe for a stolen length of paracord. Not for escape. Not yet. But if they were going to fast-track her death, she intended to disappear before they got the chance. Kara lay on the cold metal bunk, eyes open, tracking the flicker of the hallway lights. 60 days. That's all they had given her. A fast-tracked execution for crimes she hadn't committed. A death date signed without answers. But Kara wasn't thinking about dying. She was thinking about vanishing. Across town, Koda limped through Mercer's garage, sniffing at an old ammo crate. The scent triggered something. Buried memories from bomb training days, the familiar musk of oil and cordite. His tail thumped once. "You remember, don't you?" Jonah murmured, crouching beside him. That night, he rebuilt scent wheels in the yard, using trace elements from archived evidence. Leo recorded everything. Koda consistently flagged 2 compounds, RDX explosive and a distinct oil blend used on weapons linked to Nick's paramilitaries. Koda wasn't just remembering, he was investigating. In prison, Kara had begun her own quiet rebellion. She and Tasha established a routine, 1 part physical endurance, 1 part legal war room. Between sets of push-ups and chess games, they exchanged coded notes on case files, guard schedules, and floor plans. Tasha smuggled garlic bulbs to ward off infections. Kara stitched shoelaces into makeshift straps. Every act was a protest, a thread of personhood in a system trying to unravel her. Then, out of nowhere, she was called for legal access. She expected a phone call. What she found instead was Captain Vale, her old commanding officer, standing in a visitor's cage, suit pressed, eyes hollow. "I never wanted this," he said quietly. "You lied under oath." "They had leverage. My daughter's insulin trial. They threatened to cut her meds. You let them bury me." "I'll recant," he whispered, "but they'll come for me." "They already have," Kara said. 3 days later, Vale's car exploded outside a pharmacy. The prison locked down. Media contact for all inmates was banned. Back in Jonah's cottage, the truth burned hotter than ever. Leo decrypted one of the server drives they had recovered from Dock 9. Inside was a warrant signed by Vale, 3 days after his death. Forged. Someone was authorizing missions from beyond the grave. The team met under cover of darkness, deep in the abandoned vet clinic that now doubled as their command post. Rain pounded the skylights. Inside, blueprints and wires blanketed the tables. Jonah rolled out the floor plans of Crescent Heights. "We can't wait for appeals," he said. "They've scheduled the needle. We extract her." Nia paced, arms crossed. "You're talking about breaking into a state facility." "We're past legal," Jonah replied. "We're into right." Koda lay by the door, ears forward, alert. Leo smiled and tapped the blueprint's laundry chute exit. "He's in." Plans crystallized fast. Dr. Wren offered her mobile clinic as cover, its walls retrofitted with comm gear. Nia would handle drone streaming and push footage to every major newsroom. Leo would spoof prison systems and city feeds. Jonah and Koda would go inside. The break was set for Sunday night. Fog, minimal visibility, their last safe window. But Helix, the shadow company spun from Nix's remains, struck first. Friday evening, the prison's entire fiber trunk went dark. The Integrity Task Force's data logs were wiped. Backups restored most of it. But 8 critical hours were gone forever. Then Jonah's burner phone pinged. Someone had doxed his fake identity. Worse, his real address. "They know," he muttered. Kara, still in her cell, felt the pressure rising. She traced her escape map over and over. Laundry corridor, east maintenance, fence gap. But she was missing tools, bolt cutters, camo, distraction. She had resolve, but no margin for error. That night, she watched Tasha slip something from her waistband. A flip phone. "No SIM," Tasha whispered. "Tonight's guard day. Fewer sweeps." Kara hesitated only a moment, then hid the phone behind the bleach drums during her laundry shift. By morning, it was gone. Smashed. Battery ripped. A message, loud and clear. "Contact is cut." But Kara wasn't done. She braided strips of sheet into a crude climbing rope. She soaked them in sugar water to stiffen. If escape was the only option, she would take it. On the outside, Koda sat at the front door again, eyes fixed on the wind. The countdown hadn't stopped. It had begun. Saturday night was a blur of fluorescent light and artificial calm. Kara had memorized every patrol shift, every creaky vent, every power flicker. At exactly 11:54 p.m., the cell doors clicked open for the standard midnight head count. She curled forward, clutching her stomach. "Cramps," she grunted. Nurse Delgado was the only one who didn't treat her like a ghost. She guided Kara toward the infirmary, heels echoing against tile. They passed the East Wing linen closet, always damp from a burst pipe. Delgado hated mildew. "I'll wait here," she said, waving Kara in. Kara stumbled to a corner, retched into a mop bucket, and reached behind the crumbling wall. Her fingers found the cold metal handles of bolt cutters, hidden a week ago, waiting. Back in the hallway, the lights dimmed to 10%. Shift change. Kara nodded, thanked Delgado, and turned. But instead of heading back to her cell, she slipped into the maintenance stairwell. 2 floors down, the air grew thick with boiler heat. Pipes hissed like snakes in the dark. She reached the locked laundry chute access panel. Snap. The bolt cutters did their job. Panel swung open with a groan. She wedged herself into the narrow shaft, slid feet first into a mountain of warm coveralls. The scent of detergent nearly gagged her. Her heart galloped. But years of K9 breaching drills kept her nerves on a leash. She darted through the sorting area, past the humming dryers, past the sleeping machines. The rear roll-up door stood cracked for ventilation, and beyond it, the fence. Razor wire. Freedom. She crawled behind a pallet of detergent barrels. The faulty floodlight flickered, right on time. Bolt cutters again. One clean bite through the fence. She tore her shirt slipping through, fell into the sand beyond. For one breath, there was silence. Then, sirens. Red strobes. The sensor had tripped. Searchlights ignited like angry gods. Kara ran blind, lungs burning. Her knees bled from gravel. A culvert appeared like a mouth in the earth. She dove inside. Mud. Darkness. Helicopter rotors screamed above. She whispered to herself, "Stay alive, Koda." Somewhere out there, he was waiting. 8 miles north, an aging delivery truck idled at mile marker 77. It was painted the soft orange of a fruit company that didn't exist. Inside, Jonah tapped the steering wheel in rhythm with a beat only he could hear. He hadn't slept in 2 days. Koda sat in the passenger seat, wearing a high-visibility vest labeled Service K9. It was a bluff, but a convincing one. He stared out the cracked window, ears perked, waiting. Leo was in the sleeper cabin with a police scanner running. The radio hissed static, then burst to life. Inmate escape. Female. Possibly armed. Jonah froze. Koda whined, a low, vibrating sound that said more than words. "She's out," Jonah whispered. We find her first." He turned the truck around and barreled off the highway onto a dirt access road, headlights off. Dust flew behind them. The stars above blinked like they knew too much. The land ahead was open scrub, wind-battered hills, thorny brush, and dry creek beds. They were racing against the system now, and the system had helicopters. At a crossroad littered with tumbleweed, Koda suddenly tensed, then howled. Not fear, not pain. It was a sound of knowing. Jonah slammed the brakes and leapt from the cab, pistol in hand. Leo followed with the trauma kit. They moved fast, eastward, toward where Koda led. His nose stayed low, his steps sure. The dog's entire body hummed with urgency. After 20 minutes of stumbling through cactus and mesquite, they found her. Kara was curled beneath a spindly desert tree, clothes torn, wrists bleeding, lips cracked. Her eyes fluttered open. She saw Koda first. A hoarse laugh escaped her. He rushed to her, body trembling, and buried his head against her chest. Jonah crouched beside her. "We've got you." Koda didn't bark. He just stayed close, step for step, as they carried Kara back to the truck. By the time the first search helicopter passed overhead, they were already gone, swallowed by the desert's silence. They arrived just before dawn. The safe house was a decommissioned citrus packing warehouse on the edge of nowhere, surrounded by rusting equipment and the scent of old oranges. Jonah backed the truck through a side gate and killed the engine. Inside, the air was cool and stale. Dr. Wren was already there, gloves on, iodine and IV bags prepped. She said nothing as Kara was lifted onto a cot, only nodded and got to work. Koda stood watch at the door. For the next 16 hours, Kara slept, IV dripping, bruises blooming across her ribs, lips stitched with exhaustion. When she woke, Jonah handed her water, and Leo handed her back her voice, a tablet filled with decrypted files from Doc 9. They pieced it together like archaeologists of a lie. Warrants signed after deaths, funding trails circling back to corporate shells, military-grade weapons sold as agricultural pumps. One signature kept reappearing across different contracts. L. Cray. Kara stiffened. Leonard Cray. He used to be procurement director for Homeland. Vanished after a Senate ethics probe. Didn't vanish, Nia muttered. He evolved. On the last drive recovered, they found proof. Black Ops payrolls, hush fund disbursements, and a chilling file labeled CF Order N. The directive was short. Terminate asset. K. Lin. Deadline, fiscal quarter 3. Close signed by Cray's superior, M.H. Harrington. Jonah stared at it for a long time. So it was never just about the bust. They made her a liability, Nia said. A witness. Silence fell, until Kara sat up, voice raw but steady. We hit them back, but not in the shadows. We take the truth public. Nia shook her head. They own the channels. Then we break the screen. Koda padded forward, laid his paw on the center of the table, right atop the name, Harrington. Leo chuckled. Looks like the dog agrees. Outside, storm clouds thickened, casting bruises across the desert sky. Inside, justice had started whispering, and it smelled like cordite and citrus peel. The plan came together fast. It had to. Dr. Wren's mobile clinic was gutted and rebuilt with hidden compartments, fiber lines, and signal boosters. Leo tuned the gear while Koda lay nearby, eyes half shut, but ears twitching at every sound. This isn't just an op, Jonah said, taping wires under the floor panels. It's our broadcast. We go live the moment we step on site, Nia added, loading her drone into a case. There's no second take. The target, a weapons demonstration. Nix's successor, Helix Defense Systems, was preparing a live showcase in the high desert for private buyers. A drone swarm, autonomous, lethal, and illegal. If they could capture it, stream it live, and tie it back to Cray and Harrington, the world would have to watch. They assigned roles. Kara and Jonah would infiltrate wearing stolen Helix contractor vests. Nia would operate the drone from a hidden ridge. Leo would spoof airspace IDs to keep Homeland drones blind. Koda? Koda would do what he'd always done. Go where no one else could. Nose first. On the day of the op, the team rolled out in a faded box truck packed with gear and lies. Kara sat up front, helmet on, fake ID clipped to her vest. Jonah drove, knuckles tight on the wheel. Koda sat between them, tail swaying each time Kara's hand drifted down to scratch behind his ear. She whispered, "Find him, boy." The convoy wound through salt flats and old bombing ranges. Ahead, floodlights pierced the haze. Shipping containers circled a central testing field, like silent guards. Buyers from half a dozen nations stood sipping cocktails. At the far end, a blast cage holding 3 launchers. Leo's voice crackled through the comm. Magistrate arriving in 5. Kara's stomach clenched. That was Harrington's old code name. She touched her badge, still in her pocket. Not official anymore, but never forgotten. Koda's body stiffened. He smelled something. His nose lifted. He was already tracking. From their vantage point inside the perimeter, Kara and Jonah blended with the crowd. Their stolen contractor vests and forged badges passed casual inspection. Behind a curtain of security drones and laser fences, the desert had become a marketplace of death. Koda trotted between them on a loose lead, his nose twitching like a compass caught in magnetic pull. Buyers in expensive suits and sand-colored robes sipped imported liquor, murmuring in clipped diplomatic tones. Near the missile cage, a man with a boonie hat laughed a little too loudly, shaking hands with the engineers. Koda stopped cold. His growl rumbled low and volcanic. "That's him," Kara whispered. "Harrington." Jonah nodded, activated the helmet cam. Up above, Nia's drone locked onto the scene, its footage streaming in real time across an encrypted global feed. Leo injected metadata, time, location, verification keys. On a million screens, the sale had begun. Harrington pulled off the boonie hat and revealed a gleaming shaved head and a glued-on beard, now damp and curling at the edges. He didn't need a name tag. Koda's snarl confirmed it. "Target locked," Kara said through clenched teeth. They moved through the crowd, planting button cameras in crates and on scaffolding. Koda wove like a shadow, always circling back to Harrington. Then came the weapons demo. An engineer hoisted a shoulder-launched hypersonic missile onto a tripod. Harrington beamed. "Suborbital glide capability," he bragged, unaffected by modern defense grids. Sirens howled, not from the site, but from above. DHS helicopters forced to act now that the stream was live. Buyers scattered. Mercenaries raised rifles. Chaos bloomed. Koda lunged first, cutting through the crowd like a fired bullet. Harrington turned just in time to see amber eyes and a blur of muscle crash into his chest. His weapon spun from his hand. Kara slammed cuffs on him mid-fall. "Detective Kara Lin, East Point PD," she growled. "You're under arrest for conspiracy, trafficking, and treason." For the first time in months, saying it felt real. Justice had a scent, and it had teeth. The moment Harrington hit the dirt in cuffs, the lights snapped off. Every floodlight, every overhead drone lamp, gone. Blackout protocol. Gunfire erupted, wild, uncoordinated. Muzzle flashes strobed across the night like lightning from nowhere. Panic turned the buyers into targets. Mercenaries scrambled, shouting conflicting orders. Kara dragged Harrington behind a stack of sandbags. Stay down, she barked. Jonah returned fire, shielding their flank. Koda tackled one guard mid-charge, teeth sinking into the man's thigh. Blood sprayed. The guard shrieked and dropped. Retreat now, Jonah shouted. North fence. Naya detonated her drone's flash strobe, blinding pulses that turned everything into a flickering nightmare. DHS helicopters roared overhead, ropes dropping agents into chaos. Buyers fled into the desert. Guards vanished into shadows. Kara tightened the cuffs on Harrington. You're not getting lost in this mess, she hissed. A DHS agent shouted from the smoke, hands where we can see them. East Point PD, Kara yelled, lifting Harrington's wrists. We have your target. Koda limped back to her side, his shoulder reopened and bleeding, but his eyes still alert, focused. The dawn broke early that morning, first as sunlight, second as truth. Across the globe, the stream had gone viral. A top defense contractor, unmasked mid-sale. Warheads, bribes, forged contracts, all exposed in one broadcast that even the most powerful couldn't contain. By noon, California froze all scheduled executions pending investigation. Kara's conviction was overturned within 72 hours. She didn't smile. Not yet. Justice wasn't a moment. It was a reckoning. Outside East Point's K-9 unit, a new bronze statue stood a week later, a dog mid-stride, head turned back, as if asking, "Are you coming?" The dedication drew half the city. Jonah said a few words. But when Kara stepped to the podium in full reinstated blues, with Koda at her side wearing a new harness embroidered "Still on Duty," she didn't speak of vengeance. She spoke of loyalty, of systems broken, but people willing to fix them, of a dog who didn't give up when the world did. And when the applause rose, Koda barked. Once. Sharp. Proud. In the months that followed, the fallout rippled like shockwaves through a city once too quiet. Harrington stood trial. So did Cray. So did half the Helix board. Federal oversight was dragged into the daylight. Private weapons loopholes were closed with ink and fury. And Kara? She didn't go back to patrol. She was promoted, captain of the newly formed Major Integrity Task Force, housed in a converted Art Deco post office with bulletproof windows and ghosts of old letters lingering in the halls. Koda walked the threshold every morning, nose twitching at the scent of aged envelopes and coffee. The scar on his shoulder had faded to a ripple beneath sable fur. Inside, the team gathered around a glowing projector. Priya, their analyst, flicked to the next slide. Infrared stills of drone swarms unloading in a desert airstrip half a world away. Helix is back, she said. New name. Hermes Systems. Same code, same buyers. First strike in 11 days. Kara inhaled sharply. 11. That was how many days her mother had survived off the ventilator. 11 days between goodbye and silence. Jonah touched her shoulder. We're not letting it happen again. Leo hacked flight manifests. Priya spoofed tracking data. Nia ghost wrote an expose prepped for launch the moment they moved. Dr. Wren refitted Koda's vest with graphene armor, stronger, lighter, made for speed. They didn't ask for permission this time. The warrant came signed at dawn by Judge Ortega, with 5 words underlined in red. Bring me something ironclad. Sunday arrived in a fog sailors called Milk Murder. 20 agents in gray-layered gear moved like ghosts through Dock 11. Inside the hangar, pallets of drone parts sat in ordered stacks. Above, black triangles, fully autonomous, hung from magnetic tethers, like sleeping hornets. As Koda entered, he sniffed once, then trotted low across the floor. Kara followed. The hunt had begun again. Only this time, the dog wasn't just tracking weapons. He was chasing the scent of unfinished justice. Inside the hangar, the air buzzed with quiet menace. Dozens of matte black drone units, triangular and beetle sleek, hung from the ceiling by magnetic tethers. Their red standby lights blinked in perfect sync, like the breathing of a sleeping monster. Koda moved first, nose low, silent. His path zigzagged past forklift trails and oil stains. He ignored the seaweed and diesel smells, honing in on something sharper, cordite and thermite. Kara motioned to her team. Jonah flanked left. Priya monitored the signal dampeners. Nia, hidden outside, watched everything through the drone feed. Leo kept fingers poised above the remote kill switch. Then they heard footsteps, fast and erratic. Leonard Cray. The man burst onto the mezzanine with a rugged tablet in hand. Kara shouted, "Freeze!" Cray didn't. He slammed a palm onto a console. The magnetic tethers disengaged with a chorus of metallic snaps. 30 drones dropped into motion. Wings hummed. Lights shifted from red to yellow. Arming sequence. Cray laughed. "Autonomous. You're too late." Koda barked, lunged toward him. Kara sprinted up the steel stairs, Jonah on her heels. Cray vaulted the railing, landing hard on a netted stack of crates. His ankle twisted, but he scrambled to his feet. Koda leapt down beside him, teeth latching onto the hem of Cray's jacket, yanking him off balance. Kara slid down after, cuffs ready. "You're done, Cray." He smirked, blood on his lip. "Not if the swarm flies." From outside, Leo's voice cracked in overcoms. "We've lost visual. Drones off radar. Transponders disabled. They're ghosts." Priya's voice followed, tense. "They're live. If they detonate over the city." Kara shoved Cray against the wall. "Override code. Now." "No." Koda padded forward, placed his paw on the tablet screen, right over the flashing command box. Cray's eyes betrayed him, flicking toward a keypad. Leo caught it. 6314. Jonah typed fast. Access granted. Priya injected false coordinates. The swarm, thinking it had drifted over the Pacific, executed its failsafe. 30 fireballs bloomed harmlessly above the ocean. Inside the hangar, silence fell like ash. Koda exhaled. So did Kara. But justice, they knew, didn't rest for long. From the shoreline, the explosions looked like fireworks, flares of orange and white blooming above the sea. Beachgoers clapped. Fishermen pointed. No one knew what they'd almost become. In the hangar, agents moved in to secure Cray, stunned and cursing. Kara read him his rights with a voice like tempered steel. Jonah watched the drone fragments rain down through the skylights like glittering wreckage from a future gone wrong. Later that day, Nia published her headline, "MIU halts drone swarm. Private warfare exposed." The stock market reacted before the article finished loading. Arms contractors tanked. Government hearings were scheduled within hours. Inside their safe house, Kara sat at a fold-out table, staring at the now silent tablet. Next to her, Koda slept with his head on her boots, his body finally still. "We did it," Jonah said, though his voice held more fatigue than triumph. "Part of it," she replied. They spent the next 72 hours preparing, archiving footage, printing records, cross-checking satellite pings. Everything had to hold up in court, because this time, it wouldn't just be about survival. It would be about truth. 3 weeks later, Kara stood before the U.S. Oversight Committee under blazing lights and sharper stares. She wore a dark suit, no uniform, no badge. But beside her, Koda sat, vest clean, expression alert, eyes never leaving her face. She spoke clearly about evidence tampering, faked warrants, and how men like Cray and Harrington turned war into profit. Every fact a hammer. Every pause a breath held by the nation. When her voice trembled, Koda nudged her leg with his nose, a gentle metronome of courage. C-SPAN broadcasted it all. Twitter lit up with hashtags, Justice for Kara, Koda, the Truth Dog. By the end of the hearing, the senator chairing the panel whispered to his aide, "Get me the damn reform bill." The vote passed within days, but for Kara and Koda, there was no parade. No headline could capture what they had endured. That night, as they stood on the pier, waves lapping beneath, Kara said softly, "Funny. I used to think justice was a gavel." She looked down at Koda. "Turns out it's a growl." The world spun on. News cycles moved, but some ripples didn't fade. 6 weeks after the hearing, Kara stood in the main hallway of the Integrity Task Force building, reading over a sealed intelligence file. Around her, the team worked in quiet rhythm. Jonah adjusting gear, Priya coordinating signals, Leo triple encrypting drives. Koda sat by the door, tail flicking lazily, but his eyes sharp as ever. They'd stopped one catastrophe, but Helix wasn't dead. It had simply changed names again. "Got something," Priya said, clicking to a grainy satellite image. Dozens of drones poured from the belly of a cargo jet over a private airstrip in North Africa. "Same specs as the last swarm," she said. "Same obfuscated code. Only the shell company changed." Kara's jaw tightened. "What's the name this time?" "Hermes 9, first buyer, Azure Coast Emirate." Jonah whistled low. "That's the regime that bombed fishing villages with white phosphorus. We blacklisted them last year." "Guess they missed the memo," Priya muttered. Another click. A shipping manifest appeared. Batteries labeled as solar packs. Destination, Dock 11, Redwood Bay. "They're assembling drone pods here again," Leo said, then flying the pieces out on fake tourism flights. The clock ticked louder. "First strike scheduled in 11 days, Priya added. "Proof of concept for buyers." Kara stared at the timeline. 11 days. That number again. It wasn't just a deadline anymore. It was a scar. She exhaled slowly. "We stop them before launch. No press, no broadcasts. We go in quiet this time." Priya nodded. "We can reroute their outbound manifests, delay flights, fake inspections." Jonah added, "We'll need a new base of operations. MIU servers were hit last night. 8 hours of data gone." Kara looked out the window at the bay. The fog rolled in thick and steady, like it always did before something broke loose. "We still have Koda," she said. The dog lifted his head, sensing his name. He stood, stretched, and padded to her side. They'd stopped one swarm. Now they'd stop an army. Kara moved fast. Within 24 hours, the team had relocated to her old seaside bungalow, a creaking 2-story nestled above tide-slick rocks. Sea spray hissed through the windows. The walls still smelled like eucalyptus and wood polish. It became war room and sanctuary. Leo tunneled into Hermes 9's VPN, tracing warehouse camera placements and shipment trails. Priya mocked up a decoy manifest to mislead their outbound logistics. Nia ghost wrote an exposé scheduled to auto-publish once the operation ended. Dr. Wren refit Koda's vest with graphene plating, light as nylon, strong as steel. "It won't stop a bullet," she warned, "but it'll give him a chance." He wagged once. Approval granted. Then Helix struck back. At sunset on Wednesday, 3 days before the raid, the MIU's entire fiber network was severed. 8 hours of surveillance logs were deleted before off-site backups restored the servers. That night, Jonah's undercover alias was exposed. His encrypted burner phone pinged his real address. Someone had doxed him, publicly and precisely. Kara didn't hesitate. She packed up his gear, grabbed Koda's leash, and moved Jonah into the bungalow. "We still have claws," she said, clipping a GoPro to Koda's collar. "And we still bite." They set Sunday for the takedown. Judge Ortega signed the warrant with a hard line of ink. "Bring me ironclad," she said. "No more apologies to city council." Fog swallowed the coastline the next morning. The locals called it milk murder. At 4:30 a.m., the team assembled near Dock 11. 20 agents in layered gray fanned out like quiet ghosts. Brakes hissed. Earpieces clicked on. Kara's heart beat steady, 72 beats per minute. She looked down at Koda. "You ready?" He didn't bark. He just moved, trotted forward, low and deliberate, sniffing along the cracked concrete, filtering past ocean brine and diesel fumes, until he locked onto something buried and wrong. Cordite, live payload. He halted, turned, and led them in. The interior of Dock 11 felt like a hangar-sized nerve ending. Stacked pallets rose like towers. Half-assembled drones hung from overhead rails. Black triangles lacquered to an insect sheen, their magnetic tethers humming softly. Koda moved fast. He sniffed forklift trails, ignored the distracting scents, mold, coolant, diesel, and locked in on something else, something sharp and buried, the ghost of spent thermite. "Northwest corner," Kara said into comms. "He's tracking." Agents fanned out. Jonah flanked left. Leo stayed back with the uplink, and Priya monitored the drone control feeds from a nearby van. Nia's drone hovered above them all, watching from the misted sky. Suddenly, movement. A figure ran along the mezzanine. Leonard Cray. He clutched a rugged tablet and darted for the primary control console. "Stop!" Kara shouted, racing up the stairwell. Koda barked once, pure warning. Cray slammed a command key. Above them, the drone's LED lights flipped from green to amber. Arming. Tethers began releasing. Click, hiss, click. Koda charged forward. Cray tried to jump, but his boot caught a crate. He tumbled hard. The tablet skidded. Jonah was on him in a second, pinning him down. "Where's the kill switch?" Cray spat. "They don't have one." Swarm protocol. Autonomous. Outside, Priya's voice cracked in. "The drones just left the airspace. No transponder. They're headed straight out." "Toward the city?" Kara asked. "Unclear. Could be a test. Could be chaos." Koda padded toward the fallen tablet and tapped his paw against the flashing screen. Kara noticed Cray's eyes flick to the lower right keypad. Instinctive. Leo was listening. "That's it. Input?" Cray sneered. "Try 6942, Leo whispered. Kara typed. Access granted. Priya jumped in. "Injecting false coordinates, spoofing GPS. Let's herd them." They watched on satellite feed as the drones veered, slowly then rapidly, banking away from populated areas, out to sea. Then, white flashes lit the horizon. Self-destruct sequence triggered, a firework finale for weapons that would never be sold. Koda sat. Calm now. Justice didn't always bark. Sometimes it just rerouted. The smoke hung over Redwood Bay like a veil. At sunrise, locals gathered along the cliffside, pointing phones at the distant plumes of white drifting above the water. Most assumed it was a test gone wrong. Some whispered about ghost drones. No one guessed how close the city had come. In the hangar, silence reigned. Leonard Cray lay face down, hands zip-tied, his mouth bloodied from a failed escape. Kara didn't say a word. She just stared at him, eyes heavy, not with hatred, but finality. Jonah knelt beside Koda, checking his vest. He's clean, not a scratch. The dog licked his cheek once, then looked toward the sunlight peeking through the broken window. Priya's voice crackled in. Local news caught the explosions. One helicopter's filming now. What's our statement? Kara stood tall. None. Let the facts speak. But facts, of course, rarely spoke on their own. That afternoon, Senator Ray, the youngest member of the Oversight Committee, issued a press briefing. Thanks to the bravery of a whistleblower team, an illegal drone strike has been prevented. We are opening a federal inquiry into Hermes 9 and its affiliates. Let this be a message to all private war profiteers. You will be found. You will be stopped. Footage of Koda retrieving the control tablet played on every major network. Children drew fan art. A company in Vermont made plush toys that barked when squeezed. Koda became more than a K9. He became a symbol, but inside the old post office headquarters, Kara didn't celebrate. She pinned a new commendation on the wall, awarded for extraordinary service beyond duty, right next to a faded photo of her academy graduation. Her younger self smiled wide in that picture. She hadn't seen betrayal yet. She touched the frame and whispered, "Still here." Behind her, Koda shifted, curled tighter. They had chased monsters through shadows, and now they waited. Because monsters, like weapons, never stayed buried for long. A week later, Kara found herself back at her mother's grave. The cemetery was quiet, just wind brushing against stone. Koda lay beside her boots, head down, tail still. He didn't bark. He never did here. Kara unfolded a letter from her coat pocket, creased, smudged, rewritten a dozen times. She read it aloud, not for her mother, but for herself. I kept thinking justice meant putting bad men in jail, that it had a finish line, a stamp, a sound. But maybe justice is just choosing the next right thing, even if your hands are shaking. She folded the letter again, left it by the headstone, tucked under a smooth white rock. Koda licked her hand. They stayed there a long time. Later that night, back at the safe house, Priya slammed open the door holding a laptop. "We have something." Kara raised an eyebrow. "Another helix?" Number something older, buried. She spun the screen around. A decrypted memo. Header, Project Canticle, operated under a Cold War division defunct since 1984. But the language was unmistakable. Prototype autonomous units, canine humanoid interface systems, behavioral imprinting. Leo scanned it. They weren't building drones. They were building minds, Priya said. And guess who ran the behavioral trials? She clicked again. A younger Dr. Wren appeared on screen. Standing beside her? A black-furred German shepherd with one blue eye. Koda. Jonah blinked. "How old is he?" "Too old," Priya said. "Unless." She clicked again. A timestamp, 2009, and a caption KODA-7. COGNITIVEDECISIONTRIALS. Silence filled the room. Kara knelt beside Koda. He stared back at her, not blankly, not dumbly, but with the kind of stillness that held knowing. "What are you?" she asked softly. Koda blinked once, then walked to the map wall, pawed at a red pin stuck in the Balkans. Priya swallowed hard. That's where the last Canticle site was buried. Kara stood. No more ghosts, only answers. "Pack up," she said. "We're going east." The road to the Balkans was long, winding, and filled with silence. Kara sat in the front seat of a rusted rental van, eyes fixed ahead. Mountains rose like folded paper in the dusk. Villages passed by. Quiet, wary, untouched by time. In the back, Leo adjusted satellite relays. Priya parsed through decrypted Canticle files. Jonah stared out the window, sketching a layout of what they might find beneath the coordinates Koda had pointed to. The dog, meanwhile, sat between them all. Calm, steady, watching. It had been 6 days since the revelation. Koda wasn't just a K9 partner. He was part of something older. Engineered, perhaps. Modified, maybe. But still, himself. They reached the site at dawn. A forgotten facility embedded in a cliffside. Ivy choked the metal doors. Surveillance lenses were shattered. Signs in 3 languages warned of radiation, surveillance, and prosecution. But the seals had long faded. Inside, the air was sharp with dust and iron. Each step echoed like memory. Koda led, past locked labs, past shattered terminals, until he stopped at a wall that wasn't a wall. Jonah ran his hands along the panels. "There's power here." Leo found the access port. "Old tech, pre-digital, but I can get in." With a pop, the panel slid open, revealing a corridor lined with white light and forgotten hums. At the end, a chamber. And in that chamber, suspended in a gel tank, was another dog. Identical build, dark fur, one blue eye. "Prototype Koda 3, Priya whispered, reading the etched plaque. "Cryostasis initiated. Status, dormant." Kara approached the tank. Koda patted beside her, nose twitching. He didn't growl, didn't bark. He just stared, long and unblinking. Priya held up the last file. Subject 7 exceeded empathy thresholds, refused lethal protocol, displayed protective bonding to humans. Program terminated. Kara placed a hand on the glass. "You chose not to be a weapon." She looked at Koda. "You chose us." Outside, thunder rolled in the mountains. Inside, they opened the next door. Beyond the cryo chamber, they found the archive. Metal cabinets sealed with biometric locks. Tons of decayed memory drives. A projector bolted to the ceiling, its lens cracked, but salvageable. Priya crouched over the drives, pulling each into her decryption rig. Jonah kept watch with one eye on Koda, who sniffed every corner but avoided one specific doorway, a locked lab with faded bloodstains just outside. "That's where something ended," he muttered. Meanwhile, Leo managed to boot the projector with a portable power source. The room dimmed. A video flickered to life, grainy footage, time-stamped 2010. A white room. A young boy sits at a table, maybe 9 or 10, drawing on paper. Next to him sits a black German shepherd, Koda again, or one just like him. A voice asks the boy, "Why do you trust him?" The boy replies without hesitation, "Because he listens, because he doesn't lie." The voice asks, "What would you do if someone hurt him?" The boy doesn't answer, but the dog growls, a low warning sound. Cut to static. Priya's voice broke the silence. "I found the file." She pushed it to the center screen. Subject, Marco Velis, born 2000, orphaned, enrolled in Canticle program at age 8, paired with KOD, A7 for cognitive resonance testing. Kara read aloud slowly. Subject, displayed high emotional intelligence. Dog responded with non-programmed protective behavior. Result, human-dog bond breached containment expectations. Leo leaned in. They weren't just building tools, they were building partnerships, and then trying to break them. Jonah frowned. So what happened to the boy? Priya pulled up one final log. Subject terminated after failed detachment. Dog sedated. Memory partially wiped. Koda whined softly. Kara placed a hand on his back. He remembers. Thunder cracked again. This time closer. A storm was coming. But before they left, Kara picked up the drawing the boy had left in the file. It was crude, simple. A house, a girl, a dog, a home they never got to keep. The storm rolled in just as they packed up the last of the files. Rain lashed against the cliffside. The old facility groaned with wind, like it remembered too much. Koda paced the floor, restless. Jonah checked the satellite uplink. "We're getting interference. Something's jamming the band." Priya closed her laptop. "I backed up everything. But there's a new signature embedded in the last archive." She paused. Encrypted. Modern. Not part of the original Canticle code. Leo raised an eyebrow. So someone's been inside this system recently. Not just inside, updating it. Kara looked at the blinking terminal. The name of the user read, a URELIA. She froze. That's not a code name. That's a person. Priya nodded. Whoever Aurelia is, she's been rewriting parts of the Canticle protocols. On live servers. Jonah leaned over. That means this isn't a graveyard. It's a lab. Still active. Outside, lightning lit the sea. Inside, Kara's voice dropped. Then the question isn't what happened. It's what's next. Priya tracked the IP source of the last login. Signal originated from Prague, she said, 48 hours ago. Koda stood up, stared at the door, as if he understood the mission had changed. Kara gave one nod. They moved fast, out of the bunker, through the rain, and back onto the road with headlights cutting through fog like knives. Hours later, in a safe motel room, Priya found the next breadcrumb, a recently registered private lab under a fake education NGO with funding tied to an Eastern defense conglomerate. Project name? Canticle 2. Jonah ran a hand through his hair. They didn't end it. They franchised it. Kara stared out the rain-specked window, jaw clenched. They tried to turn grief into algorithms, love into weapons. Koda pressed his head against her leg. She whispered, "Not again." This time they wouldn't just shut it down. They'd burn it all. Prague was colder than expected. The city shimmered under a thin film of frost. Old stone buildings, narrow alleys, and surveillance cameras, tucked like gargoyles beneath eaves. Kara, Jonah, Leo, and Priya arrived separately. Standard protocol. They rented a room above a bakery in Zhizkov. The smell of sourdough drifted through the vents as the team assembled maps, blueprints, and heat signatures on the walls. Koda sat beneath the table, tail still, eyes alert. Priya found the lab listed as an education research annex near the university district. On paper, it offered cognitive therapy for children with PTSD. But the blueprints told another story. Underground floors, heat spikes in sealed chambers, armed personnel rotations every 8 hours. Jonah narrowed his eyes. That's not therapy, that's containment. Leo traced an aerial photo. Entry here is suicide. Fronts monitored, backs layered in triple arms. We're not going in blind, Kara said. We're drawing them out. So they staged a leak. Priya fabricated a whistleblower packet, sourced from an anonymous researcher, troubled by ethical breaches in child-animal empathy trials. She sent it to 6 newsrooms. 2-bit. By midnight, security tightened at the lab. But something else happened too. Koda reacted. As they scanned thermal feeds, he growled. Low, focused. He stared at one window of the footage. Inside the lab's eastern wing, a teenage boy was being escorted through a corridor. Brown hair, wire-rimmed glasses, thin building. Koda didn't blink. Then, he barked. Sharp, certain. Priya froze. That's Marco. Jonah scoffed. He'd be 24 by now. That kid looks 15. Kara's voice dropped. It's not Marco. It's another one. Leo zoomed in on the feed. The boy turned, just slightly. And for a moment, one fleeting second, he made eye contact with the drone camera. And smiled. They breached the lab at 3:14 a.m. No alarms, no bullets, just silence. Priya looped the security feeds. Jonah disarmed the sensors. Leo handled thermal masking. Koda led the way, ears sharp, nose twitching, muscles coiled. They descended through the maintenance corridor beneath the east wing. A cold breeze carried something synthetic. Sterile air, ozone, maybe sedatives. Kara's grip tightened on her sidearm. Then they reached it. The observation room. Through the glass wall, they saw 8 children, each no older than 14, each paired with a different animal, dogs, cats, even a hawk. Monitors tracked their vitals, emotional responses, synchronized pulse data. "They're repeating the experiment," Priya whispered. "Emotion pairing. But this time it's broader." Jonah stepped closer. "There's no fencing, no sedatives. They're not restrained." Leo frowned. "Because they're not prisoners. They're believers." On the far wall, a glowing phrase looped across a digital board. "Bonds make us more." Then the boy from the drone feed entered. He walked freely among the children. They reached for him, smiled, nodded. He wasn't just another subject. He was their leader. Koda growled low. The boy stopped. His head turned, slow, deliberate. He looked straight through the glass and waved. Kara's breath caught. He walked toward the viewing panel. With uncanny calm, he mouthed the words, "You found me." And then the lights cut. Darkness swallowed the room. A steel shield slammed between them and the chamber. Sirens blared. "Backup plan," Kara shouted. "Out the way we came." They ran, hallways flashing red, mechanical shutters closing. Jonah tossed a flash drive to Priya mid-sprint. "Get that out. It's everything." They made it out through the service shaft, emerging into the frozen alley behind the bakery. No one pursued them. No one needed to. Because the message was clear. The project wasn't hiding anymore. It wanted to be seen. And its new generation had already chosen their side. They didn't sleep. Back at the safe house, the team watched the stolen footage on repeat. The children, the animals, the boy who smiled through bulletproof glass. "It's not just training," Priya said, eyes locked to the screen. "It's indoctrination. They're raising a belief system, one built around emotional bonding as a weaponized asset." Jonah paced. "And they've learned from Canticle's failure. No more sedation, no more isolation. These kids feel loved. That's what makes them dangerous." Koda lay at Kara's feet still, until the laptop chirped. An incoming transmission, untraceable, anonymous, but intentional. Priya opened it. A video began to play. Grainy, a room with pale blue walls. The boy from the lab, clean clothes, calm smile, hands folded neatly on the table. He spoke directly to the camera. "I'm not your enemy, Kara Maddox." Everyone froze. "You think you're stopping something cruel. But we are not Canticle. We are the correction, the evolution. You should know better than anyone. Control through fear is unsustainable." Koda stood, tail stiff, ears pulled back. He still remembers, doesn't he? The boy who bled for him, the one who wasn't supposed to care. The boy leaned closer, his voice softened. "We don't want to fight you, but we will. Because this time, they chose us, and we don't unchoose our own." The screen went black. No threat, no location, just certainty. Kara closed the laptop. The air in the room felt thinner. Jonah broke the silence. "What the hell was that?" Leo answered quietly. "A declaration." Kara stood, walking to the wall map. She pulled down the old target grid, replaced it with a new one. Cities flagged with satellite irregularities, unexplained animal behavior spikes, and sudden school closures. She circled 3. "Cross-reference those," she said. "We're not chasing shadows anymore. We're tracking a movement." Koda stepped beside her. He didn't growl, but he didn't wag his tail either. He just stared, waiting. The trail led to Tallinn. A quiet school in the outskirts had abruptly shuttered due to plumbing repairs. Yet thermal satellite scans showed movement, patterns too precise for maintenance crews. The team arrived under the cover of early morning fog. It looked normal from outside. Faded paint, cracked playground, bulletin board still taped with drawings, but the halls smelled of antiseptic and silence. Jonah pried open a basement grate while Kara and Priya scouted the perimeter. Inside, the basement had been retrofitted. Rows of observation pods, each with cameras aimed at empty chairs. Testing rooms, Priya muttered. But for what? Koda padded forward, then stopped, stiff, unmoving. He let out one sharp bark. The lights above flickered. In the far hallway, a door creaked open. Kara raised her weapon. Who's there? No answer. But then, a child's voice. He used to bark like that, when I was scared. They turned. A girl, maybe 11, stood barefoot in the doorway, hair unbrushed, eyes red. I know him, she whispered. Koda stared at her, didn't move. The girl reached into her pocket. Slowly, everyone tensed. She pulled out a torn photograph. A younger Koda, and a boy, Marco. The girl held it like a relic. He told me the dog saved him, so I waited, and now you're here. Priya stepped forward gently. What's your name? The girl looked down. Lyra. Kara crouched. Do you want to leave, Lyra? The girl nodded, but her eyes darted past them. They'll know I'm gone. They always know. Just then, Koda turned, walked to the far wall, and started pawing at the concrete, hard, urgently. Jonah joined him, tore away a vent panel, revealing a tunnel. Fresh footprints, more than one child. They weren't just testing here. They were moving them. Kara looked back at Lyra. How many are there? Lyra whispered. Too many. The tunnel was damp and narrow, barely tall enough for Jonah to crouch. Koda led the way, sniffing, pausing, then pressing forward with growing urgency. Lyra followed quietly, her bare feet soundless on the cold stone. She clutched the photo like armor. They emerged into a chamber, not a room, a vault. Walls lined with digital monitors, tanks, and harness rigs. Dozens of kennels sat open, their metal doors swinging slightly. No dogs, Priya whispered, but this was made for them. Leo scanned the far corner. Wait, over there. A glass panel shimmered. Inside it, a large room filled with children, all seated in silence, facing forward. A voice spoke overhead, gentle but robotic. Focus. Breathe. You are more when you are many. No guards, no restraints. And yet, none of the children moved. Jonah cursed. It's a looped instruction feed. Conditioning cycle. Priya accessed a nearby terminal. It's running behavioral subroutines, stimulus-response reinforcement, Pavlov, but cleaner. Koda barked once, loud, sharp. Several children stirred. One even turned toward the window, eyes wide. Then, an alarm shrieked. Motion sensors tripped. Kara sprang into action. Jonah, get that door open. Priya, shut down the loop. Leo ran to block the only corridor. Koda leapt toward the reinforced door, scratching, barking, calling them out. Inside, the children stood. One reached forward, touched the glass. The screen flashed red. Emotional breach detected. Disengaging passive mode. Priya yelled, "They're waking the secondary protocol." Kara slammed her palm to the emergency override. A hiss of steam. Locks disengaging. The door opened, and suddenly the kids ran. Not in fear, but toward them. Lyra called out, "Here, this way." Koda led the charge back through the tunnel. Kara brought up the rear, gun ready, heart pounding. And just before they exited, she looked back. A final screen lit up inside the control room. Welcome, Koda 7. You've returned to complete the cycle. They didn't stop running until they reached the tree line outside Tallinn. 16 children, 1 dog, and 5 exhausted operatives. The sky was beginning to pale, thin strands of morning threading across a winter-gray horizon. Lyra held tight to Kara's hand, her small fingers trembling but firm. Jonah led the line through the woods, using an encrypted beacon to ping their extraction contact. Leo stayed at the rear, gun raised, every crunch of snow triggering his nerves. They reached a dirt road where a battered supply van waited. Priya checked the driver's face. "You late?" The woman smirked. "You early." They loaded the kids in fast. The youngest curled into blankets. The older ones sat silently, their expressions blank, like echoes of trauma had been paused mid-frame. Koda moved from child to child, sniffing, nudging, pressing his body beside them until they relaxed. He was a healer now. Kara watched him and whispered, "He remembers who he's supposed to be." As the van rolled forward, Jonah scrolled through the satellite feed on his tablet. No response team, no chase. "Too quiet," he muttered. Leo nodded. "They wanted us to take them." Priya frowned. "Why?" Then Kara checked her bag. The file, Lyra's photograph, and something else. A small data drive she hadn't seen before, labeled only, "To the one who survived." She inserted it into her rig. The screen flickered. A voice played. The boy from the lab. "This was never about the past. It's about what you'll do with the truth. You've seen our future. You've touched it. And still, you chose mercy." The van hit a bump. The screen cut. Kara sat back. The message wasn't a warning. It was a challenge. They had saved 16 lives. But something told her it had only just begun. And whatever Canticle had become, it was already watching the road ahead. The safe house was deep in the Carpathian woods, an old forestry lodge converted into a black site decades ago. Stone walls, iron doors, and a fireplace that hadn't burned in years. No signals, no satellites, just trees and wind. The children were given beds, food, warmth. But not one of them cried. Not one asked for home. Lyra was the only one who spoke, and only to Kara. "They don't know how," she explained. "They were taught to listen, not to feel." Jonah set up biometric sensors around the perimeter. Leo rewired the lodge's breaker panel for thermal shielding. Priya monitored vitals, logging every child's heartbeat, every neural spike. Koda slept at the door, eyes never fully closed. 3 nights passed. On the 4th, Kara awoke to faint humming. Not mechanical, human. She crept down the hall, found 4 of the children seated in a circle, eyes closed, swaying. Their voices blended into a soft chant. Priya arrived seconds later, holding her breath. "Do you hear that pattern?" she asked. Kara nodded. Like code. They recorded it, ran it through a spectrogram. What they found made Priya go pale. "It's emitting impulses. Frequency is identical to the old Canticle feedback loops." Jonah leaned in. "They're generating it?" Leo muttered. "They're broadcasting." Outside, Koda howled, a single sharp note that split the forest air like a warning bell. The children stopped humming, all at once, and turned to face Kara. Their eyes were calm, but their stillness felt rehearsed. One of them spoke, a boy with ash-blonde hair and a voice too steady for his age. "It's okay. We're safe now. You brought us here." Kara's blood chilled, because it didn't sound like a child thanking her. It sounded like a message being delivered, and whoever taught him to say it wasn't finished yet. Priya didn't sleep. She ran brain scans all night, comparing EEGs of the rescued children against archived Canticle 2 logs. And there it was. A signature. Low-frequency patterns echoing deep brain entrainment. Not imposed, embedded. "They're not just victims," she whispered. "They're vessels." Kara joined her at the terminal. "You think they're infected?" "Not biologically," Priya said. "Cognitively. Something inside them was programmed to respond to being rescued." Jonah crossed his arms. "A sleeper cell made of kids? More like a psychological contagion." Leo pulled up the sound recordings of their night chant. When mapped visually, The frequencies aligned into spiral structures, hypnotic patterns. They were trained to feel safe when we save them, he said, which means someone expected it, planned it. Outside, the children played tag in the snow, laughing, smiling, like nothing was wrong. But when Kara walked past them, they stopped, just for a moment, and all turned their heads at the same time, eyes blank. Synchronization. Jonah muttered, "That's not normal." That evening, Koda refused to eat. He stood at the window instead, growling low at the woods. Kara crouched beside him. "What is it, boy?" And then one of the children appeared behind her, Lyra, holding something in her hands, a radio, old, rusted, and on. "I found it under my bed," she whispered. It was already talking. Kara snatched it and crushed the batteries, but the damage was done. Every child in the house turned, even the youngest. Their eyes flickered, then dimmed, like a light bulb dying behind frosted glass. Priya's monitor screamed with neural spikes. Jonah grabbed his weapon. Too late. The signal's already been cast. Leo asked the question none of them wanted to answer. What if saving them was the activation? And no one disagreed. They evacuated the lodge at dawn. Kara carried Lyra. Jonah and Leo led the others down the slope, across frozen creeks, and through pine-thick fog. Priya stayed behind, just long enough to torch the lab. Wires, terminals, everything. They left nothing standing. But they all knew it didn't matter, because something had already left with them. By midday, they reached the rendezvous point, a cold steel bunker carved into the hillside, shielded, blacksite grade. Inside, Priya examined the children again. Normal vitals, normal scans, except one, Lyra. Her brain activity was off the charts, but not from fear or trauma. "She's emitting," Priya whispered, "like a transmitter." Jonah stared. "She doesn't even know?" "No," Priya said. "That's what's horrifying." Leo pieced it together. "They engineered her to bond with Kara, so when she trusted us, it completed the loop." "A human trigger," Jonah added. "But for what?" Suddenly, every console in the bunker blinked red. Unauthorized signal detected. External breach. Origin. Internal. Priya gasped. "It's not a hack. It's biological." Kara looked at Lyra, who had curled up in a blanket and was humming softly. The same pattern from before. Only this time. Koda howled. Not at the door. At her. Lyra opened her eyes. Startled. Confused. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. "I just wanted to feel safe." Koda barked again, frantic, pawing at the wall, then turned to Kara and growled, low, warning. "Is he saying?" Leo began. Jonah nodded grimly. "She's the beacon." The children behind them began to hum, one by one, a chorus, not angry, not fearful, just inevitable. Kara reached for Lyra's hand. "Can you stop it?" she asked. Lyra's eyes shimmered. "I don't know how." And far above them, satellites awoke, listening, responding. The signal had been sent, and the world had just received it. They had less than 6 minutes before the uplink finished. Priya was already tearing out hardware, pulling cords, crushing signal boards. "We can't jam it fast enough. It's cellular, neural, environmental." Leo looked at Kara. "She's not broadcasting with tech. She is the tech." Jonah locked the door behind them. "So what's the play?" Koda stood between Kara and Lyra, tail stiff, body trembling, waiting. Kara stepped forward, her voice cracking. "Lyra, do you understand what they did to you?" The girl's eyes welled with tears. "They said I was special, that I'd help the world stop hurting." Koda whined, low, pained. Kara knelt. "You have a choice. Right now. You can stop it." Lyra clutched the fraying photo of Marco and Koda. But what if they were right? Then they'd have taken away your choice too, Kara said gently. But they didn't. You're here. With us. Lyra's hands shook. The hum inside the bunker grew louder. Koda howled, sharp and sudden. The other children froze. The hum wavered. Kara leaned in, forehead to Lyra's. Please, she whispered. And Lyra closed her eyes. The sound stopped. Just stopped. The consoles powered down. The signal vanished, and for a moment, the world went still. Priya collapsed against the wall. She did it. Leo exhaled. Holy hell, she actually did it. Koda approached Lyra and licked her hand. She smiled for the first time. I didn't break, she whispered. I changed. Kara stood holding her close. Outside, dawn was breaking. A new day. No sirens, no drones, no war machines, just air and sky and breath. But as they packed their gear, Jonah spotted something in the ashes of Kara's pack. Another data chip. It hadn't been there before. He held it up. Kara read the label aloud. This was only the first act. They all looked at Lyra, then each other. Because sometimes, even peace is just a pause before the next decision.